Welcome to the Last in Line podcast, where we discuss faith, hope, and truth in the lives of amazing servant leaders. You are in the right place if you crave purpose and if you hunger for a life of significance. This podcast applies biblical truth to our daily lives, and we pray that you walk away encouraged and inspired. This is the Last in Line podcast.
Hey, it's an honor to welcome Dustin Diefenderfer from MTNTOUGH Fitness. He's the founder who created this movement, this platform. He traded in the corporate world for the path of purpose that he felt God was leading him to do. Dustin and his wife actually made a pretty bold decision some years back to quit their corporate America jobs and move to Uganda and manage a orphanage of about 240 kids, and where they taught them how to farm and taught them the agricultural business, taught them how to stay fit, physically active, teaching them obviously the Word of God. Dustin's a very spiritual man. And so he just got deeper connected to understanding the importance of utility fitness and functional fitness. And he was telling me in our conversation that he realized as he hunted through the mountains, loading out and dressing out an elk or some wild game takes its toll physically on you, and you have to be capable in certain ways, and just going in the weight room didn't always prepare him. So he wanted to mesh the two together, that you could actually apply some of your strength training to actual mountain fitness and mountain capabilities. So he came up with MTNTOUGH, and it's a great organization. It's a great mission, clearly, to develop fitness programs that help train up folks virtually. He does a Tough Fest event coming up actually in, June, I guess, in Bozeman, Montana, where he lives. And so it was cool to get to know him, man. I've kind of admired him from afar for a little while and reached out. And he's very personable, very approachable. And so I think you're going to enjoy hearing his story, like how they got to Uganda, how they realized God's calling, how they stepped out in faith and bold courage that really was required to overcome some of the fear and apprehension. But they stepped into God's calling. They stepped into their true mission and purpose. And look what you see from that. Like, this was born out of just raw courage and faith. And so it's an honor. I admire him and what they've been able to accomplish. So help me welcome Dustin Diefenderfer to Last in Line podcast. Dustin Diefenderfer, welcome to Last in Line podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Man, I've been practicing that last name all day, and I'm glad you corrected me before we hit record. I almost just said Dustin the Defender, because that sounds awesome. And it probably fits right into what you're all about anyway. But man, with MTNTOUGH, you founded this company, and you haven't always been doing this. So talk to us about, because I personally, selfishly, and maybe some of my listeners will want to know how you transitioned, because you did have probably a standard 9 to 5. I don't know exactly what it was, but your bio says corporate America, and you guys, being faith-based Christian folk, you went down to Uganda and started running an orphanage of 240 kids. So tell me about all this and how your background coming up through early corporate America.
Yeah, I love this topic. I'm glad you brought it up, and it's really timely also, because with what we've been doing at MTNTOUGH over the last couple of years, and through some of the individuals I met and on the MTNTOUGH podcast, in addition to my full-time responsibilities at MTNTOUGH, I've also been doing a lot of work over the last 12 months on the anti-human trafficking project stateside. And with your exact question of transitioning and what that looks like in different seasons of life, I'm I'm in the middle of a lot of those kind of thoughts lately because of the human trafficking stuff and the work that I've been doing there, and how I'm going to connect that to Mountain Tough and make sure that Mountain Tough and the team and the brand and everything is taken care of as me as the founder. But I also want to spend time on this anti-trafficking in the US because of what I've seen over the last 12 months. So from some of the people that have come on the show, Jared Hudson at Covenant Rescue Group came on the show last year and invited me down for some operations. And now I've been going on as many as I possibly can make with my schedule. And I feel like God has shown me that for a reason. And I feel like God is calling me to certain things around that for a reason. But it does connect to your question. And it certainly feels a lot like my earlier story of setting up Mountain Tough. And it's interesting because I just got home from a trip where we were talking a lot about this. And I think that it is kind of like faith. Faith is the currency that God wants us to operate in, and faith is the currency that God does business in. And so I think in these seasons of transition, this one as well as some of my previous ones, our gut instinct is always to look for clarity. We're looking for a lot of different confirmations, and we're looking for that 100% clarity on, is this the right step? Am I moving in the right direction? But I don't think that's how God operates, and I don't think that's how he wants us to operate, but it is our tendency, it is our leaning, it is like our flesh wants clarity because we want to make sure in these seasons of transition we're taking care of our financial security, our family, school system, where we're going to live. And we think about those things looking for that clarity, where my experience previously was definitely just living off faith, living off faith, living off faith, and seeing God provide over and over and over again. But even how you and I started the conversation is fascinating because I think as you get older and you get a little bit more secure, your risk aversion goes way down. Where when I was younger, my risk aversion was very, very high. So I was very comfortable taking crazy risks. And then when kids and mortgages and everything comes around, that goes down, even though it shouldn't, because God is still going to provide in the exact same way he did at all ages of our life. So that is interesting that it's happening now, and it feels like a lot of the same feelings that I had when I was starting Mountain Tough. And so the Mountain Tough story was that I'm a Montana kid. I was born and raised in Montana, and we came from a really passionate outdoor family. And we had a big family. My dad grew up on a horse ranch outside of Sheridan, Wyoming, and he came from a family of 9. But seven of the 9 were boys and 2 were girls. And so as I was growing up, I had a lot of uncles and a lot of cousins, and we were just living in the mountains around Sheridan and the Bighorns. And as that progressed, we started doing a ton of fishing, a ton of fly fishing, high mountain lakes, tons of backpacking, and then tons of archery elk hunting as I got older. So we started hunting, and then this passion for archery really started consuming us, especially my dad and I. Archery was a really amazing bond, and we were bonded through archery, and we were doing archery elk hunts in Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, looking for getting in the elk woods as much as we could. So my upbringing was really outdoorsy all the way through high school, and then I came to college at Montana State University here in Bozeman, and I pursued a business degree. So I did management, marketing, and entrepreneurship. Really enjoyed that. And then to pay for college, I was guiding fly fishing trips. So I guided
Mm.
fly fishing trips on the Bighorn River all summer. And then I'd come back to Bozeman in the fall and spring for college and then go back and guide again in the summer. So lots of outdoor time, lots of vitamin D, lots of physical exercise. But I feel like I was doing what the world wanted me to do, which I feel like there was societal pressure to pursue this business degree. So, get a business degree, get a great business job,
Hmm.
kind of follow that American path. At that time, I didn't realize that I was following a path, but it wasn't the path of my heart. So it wasn't what I was feeling passionate about with the physical exercise and the outdoors. The corporate business path was not leading me in that direction, even though, family was happy that I was doing that, society was
Hmm.
happy I was doing that, friends were happy that I was doing that. So what ended up happening is I graduated and I got a amazing business job in Bozeman. At the time, there was a lot of people that needed to leave the state to find great jobs. And I found this very high paying corporate America job, freshly graduated from college.
Mm.
And we were connecting Fortune 100 executives to share ideas in these think tank setups. And so we would have like the COO of Starbucks, Nike, American Express, UPS, and we would connect them to share ideas to solve problems. And they loved it because they were from non-competing industries and they were all dealing with a lot of the same issues, but they just never had a chance to connect in a peer group like that, to
Hmm.
dive in and get some feedback. So excellent learning opportunity, excellent job, all the benefits, great pay. But I really noticed that in that environment, my my heart wasn't fulfilled. So my heart wasn't fulfilled in the outdoor time, the physical time. It was a very telephone focused job. We're on the phone all the time. We're on the computer all the time. We're inside all the time. And so I really felt like even though it was everything that I thought I was supposed to do, it was it was negatively impacting my soul and my heart because
Hmm.
I'd kind of gone away from my gifts and my talents.
Hmm.
Ironically, my wife was feeling kind of the same way. We started dating in college, and she got a marketing degree. So she was working at a marketing agency, and she was really feeling dissatisfied as well. And we ended up going on a short-term mission trip through our church. So our trip called out to the congregation for help, and they were looking for a group of people to go to Ethiopia. So we were both in these jobs that we weren't really satisfied with, even though they were excellent jobs. We went to Ethiopia, and our whole focus in Ethiopia was working with kids that lived in the landfill. So it would be like if you went to the Houston landfill and there was a 500 kids living there full time.
Hmm.
So they slept there, they ate there. The reason they were there was they could kind of pick through the garbage piles and find scraps to eat or find plastic to recycle.
Hmm.
And so it was just a complete shock to our American way of life. It was a complete shock to anything that I had ever seen or experienced before. And just being able to be there and love on those kids and find a way to help with food, water, shelter, anything at all had the opportunity to completely transform their life. And we got home from that trip and we were completely wrecked. So we were wrecked from being back from what we had seen. We were back in those jobs that we were dissatisfied with. We're back in America with, everything that you possibly want and have. We're living in one of the best towns in America. We're living in Bozeman. Life is too good after everything we had just seen. And so we knew that if we were going to go back and do something now would be the time. No kids yet, but we didn't really know what to do. And we knew that God was probably calling us to do something, but we needed some sort of action step to execute on that feeling. And the cool thing was I was driving down a street in Bozeman that I'd probably been down 1,000 times. I always took this street home to that house we were living in. And I looked left at one point in that drive, and about a block and a half off the main street, I saw a sign that said Uganda Orphans Fund. And this was this was before phones, smartphones.
Mm.
Man, Uganda Orphans Fund. I had no idea that anyone in Bozeman had kind of like a full-time Africa thing going on. And I assumed that's what it was based on the sign. So I sped home. And this was in the stage where we were kind of in that post-trip depression. We knew we needed to do something. God was calling us to do something, but we didn't know what to do. So I sped home and I Googled Uganda Orphans Fund as quickly as I could. And the story on the homepage was a successful stockbroker went to Africa and his life was wrecked. So he decided to just keep going back to Africa. And I was like, man, I have to have coffee with this guy. And I met him for coffee, and he'd been with his whole board of directors. He'd been praying for someone to teach the kids entrepreneurship. And I just graduated with that entrepreneurship degree, and he also wanted someone to build like the nursing and first aid clinic. And my wife had really been praying about returning to nursing school instead of using that marketing degree.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really amazing confirmation. And
Well,
so,
can I ask a question real quick?
yeah,
And I should have stepped in a little bit ago, but I wanted to ask you mentioned obviously God kind of impressing upon you guys both, and your hearts were not in your other jobs, and then now your heart is completely wrecked for these kids. Like, were you guys always in church, like faithfully Christian, like on fire for the Lord, or did you have a maybe radical transformation moment where you were just kind of like, okay, God is definitely real. I want to pursue him. Like, what was your faith journey like before? And then I want to get into the logistics of going to Uganda.
yeah, yeah, that's a great question. And I didn't have a complete radical transformation moment. I was really my foundation in my Christian walk and my walk with Jesus definitely started from my grandma. My grandma was on fire for the Lord, still to this day, almost like anyone I've ever seen before. And we spent a lot of time with her growing up. But then with my immediate family, we were definitely that American Christmas and Easter family. So we never went to church. We never really talked about church. We weren't praying at dinner or talking anything about our walk with God. And we would just kind of show up for a church service at Christmas and one at Easter. And then anytime we did go spend time with our grandma, it was completely opposite. Everything was about our walk with God. So I had a really strong influence there. But it wasn't until college that I really kind of started getting wrecked, and that a lot of that was through via my relationship with my wife. And so her mom was passionate about going to church, and we went to a great church with her frequently. And that's really when, my eyes started kind of opening to the whole story and everything that I felt was going on. And that's real. I had given my life to Jesus earlier through that connection with my grandma. Um, but it wasn't, I would say, until going to those services with my wife in college that I really started to kind of shift my walk with God versus it just being a salvation moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And you obviously got closer and more mature in your faith to fast forward as a corporate executive and your wife working to actually knowing when you're feeling led to go a certain direction because you don't have peace in a particular place, but then you're called because you went on this trip to Ethiopia and you're like, okay, I'm being pulled here, and then confirmation by the sign. So you have coffee with this guy and he needs all of your skill sets that you actually have. He's been looking for you, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, that was cool when that happened because then we just knew we knew that this was the place we were supposed to go, which was a good feeling instead of just kind of flying to Africa and walking around aimlessly. We needed that we needed that connection point, and he had been praying for it, which was so cool.
Mhm.
But then we wound up boots on the ground over there. I spent about 2 years there. My wife spent one, and then she did end up coming back to Bozeman for nursing school. So in that second year of Uganda, I was kind of back and forth seeing her. But it was a campus in Uganda of about 240 kids. And that founder of Uganda Orphans Fund that I met with that day in the coffee shop, he had been planning orphanages in Uganda since 2001. And we were at this time working for him. This would have been around 2010, 11, 12, somewhere in there. So he had almost a decade of experience of serving in Uganda. And what was going on in Uganda at that time was Joseph Kony came through Uganda, and he's really infamous in a lot of movies and well known because he used child soldiers to massacre like 600,000 people. So he ran the Lord's Resistance Army. He came through Uganda, massacring 600,000. There was a civil war going on in Uganda, and he was the leader of this Lord's Resistance Army. So that founder of Uganda Orphans Fund had been serving that situation for about 10 years, rescuing kids. And this latest project that he had been praying for us to work on was his latest vision, and it was like a campus. And so the idea was raise future leaders of Uganda so that they can start changing the country from within and teach them life skills, trade skills, so that they're not stuck in the orphanage kind of welfare system forever. And so it was right up our alley. We had a primary school, a secondary school, we had the church, and then everything we needed to run a bunch of micro businesses and teach the kids micro business skills. And so we had a tilapia pond for growing and selling fish. We had a chicken egg laying operation for eggs. We had a pineapple grove. We had milk cows for dairy. And everything was teach the kids how to run these small farming operations and then turn it into a business, so that then they can take that business, maybe pay for a vocational school, maybe pay for a college. And it was entrepreneurship. It was outside. It was very physical. And it was 24/7 adventure. You never knew what was going to happen. You never knew what was going to happen next. And then you're just surrounded by these kids all the time. So still, for sure, it was one of the most adrenaline and rewarding kind of pumping things we've ever done.
Was it unsafe at any point? Like when you were over there, it's pretty volatile. I had a pastor come on that's from Uganda that does a ton of revivals and just events with hundreds of thousands of people where he's a speaker. But he was telling me how he's had his attempts on his life several times, and obviously he's in more of a out front facing position. But did you, I mean, have any stuff kind of? Were you a little on edge there?
You're definitely kind of on edge all the time. Like, there's when we were there, there was like mercenaries were still trying to run around and find Coney and Coney's army. Obama sent special operations after Coney in 2012, so right after we were kind of wrapping up. That said, we never felt like our life was in immediate danger. It was more kind of like 24/7. Your situational awareness was very, very high. Um, a lot of a lot of times that you felt like, maybe someone was out to get you, but we never actually saw anything transpire.
Hmm.
And mostly what it was definitely a lot of health stuff. I mean, um, I ended up getting malaria. My wife ended up getting malaria, and just a lot of different illnesses, sicknesses. Um, but you always knew that like the security threats were around. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but it was also a lot of faith from that perspective too, because when I got there, the one thing that we noticed right away from a security standpoint is, I think Uganda's like the size of, I'll probably misstate this, but I remember Ethiopia was like the size of Oregon with 80 million people in it.
Mm-hmm.
Those stats might be off, but what I
Mm-hmm.
noticed right away is no matter where you go in a lot of those African countries, you're surrounded by hundreds of thousands of people. And so you knew if anything were to go wrong, even if you were like heavily armed, there's not much you're going to be able to do because it's always kind of that mob justice, and you're always surrounded by a lot of individuals. So there's a lot of faith in just that God wants you there, and God's going to provide some protection.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure you had case after case of God's confirmation of that you were right there, meant for a time such as this. Whenever you were there serving and those kids, and I imagine, given that you showed them all the businesses and how to harvest and run a business and generate revenue, like you're just right in your sweet spot over there, and you're doing a lot of good work. Is that still running well? Like, you just passed the baton to people that come in after you, and you've kind of built the foundation and the infrastructure for those businesses, and then those kids obviously grow up. So, what are you kind of hearing since you left? I don't know how long ago that was, but have you heard any cool stories about how those kids have turned out, or a majority of them?
Yeah, my wife and I actually talk quite a bit about that. The baton was passed, and so um, my wife and I ended up coming home because she got pregnant with our first daughter, and that's kind of where the Mountain Tough story begins. But we built a little guest house over there, and we really thought this was kind of our long-term career ministry. We thought we'd be over there for the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm.
And so we loved it. We built that guest house, and then she got pregnant, and we were naive enough that without ever having a child before, our thought was we would fly home to Bozeman, stay with family for 5 weeks, have our baby delivered in the Bozeman hospital, and then fly back over to work at the orphanage with our newborn. That was our plan. That was our our entire plan. We didn't have a backup plan. But the orphanage did continue. Another family came and ran it after us, and then it was it was taken over by a larger NGO, and a larger NGO has been running it ever since. But your question about impact is funny because my wife and I always wonder, it was so clear that God called us there with that confirmation, but we don't know if it was to help a bunch of kids. We don't know if it was to help start a business. We don't know if it was to help maybe one kid that did something. The ripple effects of that always kind of blow us away. So we don't know if it was a big giant impact, or we don't know if it maybe it was one kid that we helped with a medical issue. That one kid then did X, Y, and Z. And I think that's a lot of our life is, the seeds and the fruit we might never know. We might never know, and we might pass before anything, comes of that. But we do know that God wanted us there for that time, and what we did or didn't do in that time and what impact it made. We know some small testimonials for sure, but the big grand design, I'm not sure of.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like you said, I don't know that we necessarily get to know everything, and that's fine. That doesn't really direct whether or not we plant those seeds, right? We may not water and we may not harvest, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, you guys definitely had we're certain that you were supposed to be there, and that's really enough. I mean, that should be enough. If you know and you're sold that the Holy Spirit is co-signed that direction, then really that should be enough. And you got walk through it, and faith without works is dead. So I mean, you
Yeah.
got to go out and put your hand to the plow, literally.
Yeah.
So as I'm gonna transition a little bit to, like you said, mountain. Did adoption ever cross y'all's mind over there? I mean, I would imagine it obviously did. I don't know if you adopt any children or think about it, or what goes along with that mindset?
Yeah, it definitely it definitely crosses my mind, and it's definitely something that we still talk about. We did not adopt, and Uganda, while we were there, was closed to adoption.
Okay.
And and so a few of those African countries will go through a cycle where they're open to adoption, then closed, or open or closed, depending on where the government's stance is at that moment. So sometimes the government gets in a stance of we don't need outside countries adopting our children and influencing our children,
Mm.
even with the millions and millions of orphans in a lot of these African countries. They can get in that operating mode sometimes. So the seasons that we were there, the operating mode was closed,
Mm.
and that was a big part of if Uganda's adoption culture is closed currently, the best thing we can do is try to create future leaders of Uganda.
Mhm.
So that ethos and modality of our group really focusing on, how do we make a future leader that can change this country from the inside out was definitely kind of the stance that we were working under.
Yeah.
But but man, it's hard. It's hard kind of seeing a lot of that stuff without going, down the adoption road in your head for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine when you're in Ethiopia watching the whole landfill experience. I mean, I would just be like, look, load them all up.
Yeah.
We'll find a place that's better
Yeah.
than this for sure. But yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of the governments are closed off. Now, when you come back and you're going through, you're about to start Mountain Tough, or you have at that point, you have your first child. Like, did you have some, because you're a big physical fitness guy, but not just get in the gym and see how many personal bests you can come up with each week of squats and deadlifts and bench press. Like, I think you're more of a functional strength trainer, right? And get guys in
Yeah.
the woods and actually be able to haul some stuff out of the woods.
Yeah.
Yeah, and So did you have formal physical training? Like, are you a CPT? Are you you got some background in that? Because a lot of your programs are pretty like structured and regimented and really like dialed in pretty good.
Yeah, it's crazy how it all happened. The Mountain Tough story was kind of going, if I think about it now, the Mountain Tough story was going parallel with everything else in my life, even though I didn't know it. And so when I came to college in Bozeman, I loved going to the gym, and I would go to the gym and I would train with this group of wildland firefighters, and we were always hitting the gym really hard. But because they were wildland guys, they always wanted to train to be better at wildland firefighting. So they always were thinking about how can I be really physically fit to move well in the mountains all summer while hauling a heavy pack. And so I didn't know how valuable that was going to be at the time because that was years before the creation of Mountain Tough. And then with my life before college and then my life in college, I was doing a tremendous amount of hunting in archery elk hunting. And so I was hunting all the time. And then I started training with these firefighters. And I started realizing that, wow, like if you specialize your training, it really does make a big difference. And then I had a light bulb moment. My wife is a passionate runner. So we're in college. This is before Africa, before the corporate America stuff. And I'm elk hunting a lot. And then my wife really loves to run. So we kind of shift from lifting and functional training, and we start doing a bunch of marathons. We're running marathons all over the country,
Mm, mm.
and then we start running ultra marathons, and we're running ultra marathons in the mountains. But the light bulb moment was I was running all year in the mountains. I was really lean, and I was flying through the backcountry that fall and hunting season. I harvest an elk, and then it was one of the worst pack outs I've ever had in my life. And the light bulb was I'd lost enough strength that the pack out was not feeling the way it was supposed to feel based on my previous experience. So that light bulb was like, wow, someone should, if you want to be a successful backcountry hunter, you should train as a backcountry hunter, not train as a lifter or not train as a runner. You should decide what your specialty is, and if it's backcountry hunting, then you should break down the skill requirements and train just to this sport. And that's what the NFL does. That's what the
Hmm.
NHL does. Anyone in the military, they're all training to be really good at one job.
Hmm.
But no one in the hunting community was doing that. Uh, in the in the early days of 2014, 15, 16, there was a lot of people doing heavy pack road marches for hunting. There was a lot of people doing the stair climber, but no one really was training at one thing to be really good at one thing. And so I always knew that that was a really big blue ocean opportunity. I always knew that someone should do this. This would be really successful. The market needs it, people need it, and no one has created a step-by-step plan of if you're going on a 10-day archery Colorado elk hunt, this is how you should train to thrive on that hunt. And
Wow.
so even when I was in the corporate America spot and even when I was in Africa, I always knew that that was a blue ocean opportunity that no one ever had gone after. So when we got home with our when we came home and had our daughter delivered, I knew right away when my daughter was born that I wasn't going to be able to take her back to Africa right away, even though we thought we were going to. Uh, but when we actually had a baby and I actually knew like the security risks, the health risks, the travel, the transportation, getting her back to the orphanage, I knew that that wasn't going to happen right away. And we were stuck at home without a plan B. Like my wife didn't have a different job. I didn't have a different job. We had this brand new baby daughter. But because I'd always known that that blue ocean opportunity exists, it was kind of like a reverse burn the ships moment. It was the ships had been burned because now we're home with a baby without a plan. And I knew from my previous experience where my soul wasn't fulfilled that I didn't want to go back to corporate America, but we were already kind of used to living off of nothing. And so I was like, man, now's the time to get this
Mm.
Mount Tough thing off the ground. So I had a lot of gym experience, I had a lot of hunting experience, but I started it really bootstrap. So I ended up going and getting my NASM certification. I started training people in the park behind my house. But I mean, the whole company started with three guys in the park behind my house. And I found those three guys because I built the logo and then I hung a flyer that said, looking to train backcountry hunters. And I hung that flyer at our bow shop. And then it's just evolved ever since then.
I mean, yeah, I mean, that's how they draw it up in the books, right? I mean, just like that. That's how that's textbook. I
It's
mean, yeah.
crazy.
I mean, okay. So I mean, it sounds like you just had to put your hand to, writing it down and then just going out and starting small. And it seems like everybody I talk to on this podcast that has scaled to the point that you're at sort of did start that way. Like they had a passion, they had a skill, and then they knew there was an audience that wasn't being a need that wasn't being met. And those things align, and it
Mhm.
just seems like there's a business just waiting to be born right there. But
Yeah.
you've come to some, I don't know, some watershed moments mentally, it sounds like, just because you talk a lot about mental toughness and mindset. So I want to tap into some of that. You grew up not like a lot of people east of Colorado. I mean, we here in the plains, right, don't really grow up hiking mountains and
Yeah.
killing elk with a bow. But you grew up sort of knowing how to do hard things, and your dad kind of just immersed you in that. But how do you translate that into mindset coaching or teaching somebody else? Because you have it and it's probably just comes natural to you. Or do you have to tactically like remind yourself how to get there and stay there and operate in that wheelhouse?
Yeah, the mindset stuff is really cool and really fun to dig into. And in Mountain Tough, we decided right after those park sessions when we built the team and decided to go online with Mountain Tough, we made the decision that mental toughness was going to be the backbone of our whole entire company. And the reason that we did that was because we knew that mental toughness is going to trump physical fitness in determining the success or failure of what people are going after in their life in terms of goals. So, in a hunting scenario, we knew that you need physical fitness to thrive, but we knew that you're going to succeed or fail probably depending on your mental toughness. And
Mhm.
those are the stories you hear from special operations guys that go to buds and they talk about the D1 athlete that's just a complete machine ending up dropping out while the farm kid from Wisconsin makes it because that farm kid has been used to waking up at 4 in the morning since he was 12 feeding the cows. It's the mental toughness that allows us to reach the intentional goals that we set in our life. And we knew that really early on because we had studied that with successful backcountry hunters. When we studied successful backcountry hunters, there's a statistic that if you bow hunt elk, you are going to have 1 out of 10 year success. So if you hunt 10 years in a row with your bow for elk, 1 out of those 10 years you're going to be successful. Well, we knew that there was guys that for 20 years in a row had harvested elk with their bow. So when we unpacked what's going on with those guys, what we found was some of them were physical specimens, but some of them were not. But what they all had was this mentality that they were going to stay out longer than anyone else. They were going to stay out when the storm came in. They weren't going to let failure get them down. That they weren't going to kind of pout if they had a bad day. They were going to push one more ridge line further back than anyone else. So it was this mindset component that was really separating them, even though the physical was important. And you don't have to be as mentally tough if you're in physically good shape, because it takes longer to hurt as bad. So physical is important, but mindset always trumps the physical. And so we've been baking that in to everything we do over the last 9 years. And so when we're coaching people on it, a lot of the coaching is around doing hard things every day. And that's only been backed up more recently by a lot of science. So like last year, there was a Andrew Huberman podcast that went viral. And he talks about the part of your brain that's the willpower part of your brain. The willpower part of your brain can atrophy or grow. So just like a bicep or just like a quad, if you're not training it, it'll atrophy. If you're training it, it'll grow and be strong. And that's how we've always defined mental toughness, but now there's science showing the actual activity of this happening in your brain. And so the science of that is that you have to do something you don't want to do for that part of your brain to grow. And so they'll talk about if there's people now that are cold plunging every day, and if they crave the cold plunge, then that part of their brain stops growing. So it has to be something that you don't want to do, that you're forcing yourself to do. The nice thing about physical fitness is a great way to manifest mental toughness. So if you do a hard workout every day that you know is going to be hard, you know is going to be difficult, then you're building that mental toughness. And so we're doing it through the physical training, by how we design our workouts, how we structure our workouts, how our workouts can be more difficult than others. A lot of times we'll have a false finish in our workout. So you think you're done, but you're not actually done, to see how people are going to react and how they're going to overcome that. And then addition to a lot of our coaching is making sure that people are finding ways to do something that's hard every day.
That's wow. Yeah, and as you're talking about the Navy SEAL guys, talking about the Wisconsin guy that's up at 4 every day, makes it because he figured out how to embrace the suck. Like you are teaching people how to just like, but at the same time, you can't really look forward to it because then that part of your brain's done growing. But I can tell you right now, I mean, I'm 52 and I've worked out, lifted heavy weights well, heavy for me. Looking at you, they probably wouldn't be that heavy, but like for 25 to 30 years, I've been consistently doing that. Well, I never once looked forward to going to the gym or lifting ever. So that tells me my brain might be in a decent shape. But at the same time, there are things that I could probably do that would push me beyond that. And like you said, the false, I don't guess you could false finish yourself because your brain already knows you're tricking yourself. So I don't guess that's possible. But what has made it, like, have you done any studies for the people that can't get past it, like that break in those moments of not wanting to do it, and so they just don't? Like, how can you get people fixed of that? Because I think we have a society full of that. Like, look around, people that just are like, I don't feel like going to work today, I can call in, or something at a greater scale. But talk about some of that, how we can, I don't know, improve that in people.
Yeah, the most impactful thing that I've ever seen work related to that question is identity work. And identity work seems to definitely be a big factor in life transformation. And, you know, identity work, if that is done first and then physical fitness is started to add on top of that, can be successful. And the way that that works is if you're just working out to lose a couple pounds, there's a good chance that that is not going to last and revert to your old methods. But if you decide that you're going to train so that you can keep up with your kids when your kids are 26, or if you decide you're going to train because you want to be able to hunt in the backcountry with your grandkids. So when you're 60, you want to be able to elk hunt with your grandkids when they're ready to elk hunt. Those identity based decisions really start changing the game for people. And we've seen it in so many different ways, but kind of stepping aside to do that identity work first. And so it could be hunting related. The ones around kids are always really, really strong and sticky. The ones around grandkids are really, really strong and sticky. We've seen a lot of identity work done around, I want to be able to serve my community. I want to be able to protect my community. I want to be able to, be a protector for my family if ever anything were to ever happen. And a lot of that neuroscience comes from like an old study they did when a lot of Americans were smoking and a lot of Americans were trying to quit smoking. They would be trying to quit. They'd be at a party and they'd be offered a cigarette, and they would have half of the respondents answer no thanks. And then the other half of the respondents who were offered a cigarette, who were trying to quit at a party, would say, I am not a smoker. And the ones that said, I am not a smoker, were like 80% more likely to have long-term success than the ones that just said no thanks. So anytime we can connect our life plan to our identity, then you see really big life transformations start to happen. And so that identity, like one of the best things you can do is just, write it out. Or one of the strongest things I've ever seen is that obituary work, where you take a day, you take a weekend, and especially for men, and you actually sit down and you write your own obituary. What do you want your wife, what do you want your family to be written about you the day that you pass? And when you do that work and think about what you want that obituary to say, that really does a good job of locking in that identity. Because as you write that and you think about, if you think about dying when you're 65, 75, 85, what you want that to say really starts kind of locking in that. But that kind of stuff works so much better than thinking about like a strength goal or weight loss goal. And it really is the separator from the folks that have like 20 years of training success versus a year of training success.
Wow. Yeah, because the shallow, I guess, for lack of a better term, personal best or weight loss goal, to me, those are fluid documents because you can manipulate those. If you're talking about my why is I want to walk my daughter down the aisle, and that's 20 years from now, bro, that's not a fluid document. Like that's pretty much locked in, and you better figure out a way to make that happen. So I agree. That's a great way to look at it. Well, okay, so as we sort of close up, I mean, this kind of flew by and I wasn't prepared for it to go this fast, but I want to be respectful of your schedule. Man, what do you feel like, kind of back to the spiritual side of things? I would ask, because I noticed it's on your website, but you talk about spiritual growth and training. Now, you're not obviously boxed into just Christians being a part of your program. Of course not. But how do you incorporate that? And is that a part of the regular regimen, or does someone have to intentionally go in and click that to be a part of a spiritual dynamic?
Yeah. I think that, over the years we've added a lot of faith-based content in the app that individuals have the choice to go engage in if they want to. And historically, that faith-based content has been series and modules on being a better father, being a better husband, overcoming pain, overcoming adversity from a spiritual perspective. And those were led by great men that are still part of our team. But those were series of content that you would it'd be your decision to go through them outside of our normal strength and conditioning programming.
Mm-hmm.
One of the coolest things that has happened is this product now has gone completely viral for us, and it's the daily prayer. And so
Mm,
what happened with Mountain Tough is, we have a lot of programming in the app, whether it's full gym, no gym, body weight,
mm-hmm.
heavy pack, weight vest. But one of our most popular products are the dailies. And so there's a minimal gear workout that's fresh every 24 hours. And there's a full gym workout that's fresh every 24 hours. It was something about that freshness that really held people accountable. It gave them kind of that FOMO where they never wanted to miss it. And then it's always new, it's always changing. So those products really took off. And so we were like, what could we do from a spiritual standpoint that kind of mimics the success we've seen of the dailies from the physical standpoint?
Mm,
So I'd say about 4 months ago, we launched daily prayer, and it's a 5 to 8 minute guided prayer, led by Brian Schwartz. He was a Jacksonville Jaguar.
mm,
He films those out of Jacksonville, and we upload them onto our side. But a lot of people, they know the life change impact that prayer has, but they're not sure where to start or what to
mm-hmm.
say.
Mm-hmm.
And he just guides you through that every single day.
Mm-hmm.
It's still up to the Mountain Tough community if they want to click on that or not. But
Mm-hmm.
man, it's crazy the testimonials that have been coming in from that.
That's good. That's good. I wonder too, I haven't gotten to navigate through all of the aspects of the site. I did look and see that Jim Ramos is on there and he's been on
Yep.
the show a bunch of times, so he's awesome. But
Awesome.
no, so have you created any sort of uh, I don't know, interactive community that people could go in and maybe be like, hey, did this today, where guys are kind of sharpening each other and there's like that interaction live type. Hey, I did a workout, man. How was yours? Good, man. Try this next time. Okay, cool. Or you know what I mean? I don't know if that's even doable.
Yeah, we have a little bit of that. So like under each workout and in every part of the app, there is the comment section. So a lot of people are leaving
Oh,
comments
cool.
there on, how they did and how others are doing. And
Cool.
then you'll see that also in the daily prayer type products where people are encouraging each other. We have a we have a lot of encouragement going on our Facebook community, and
Mm-hmm.
so you'll see people interacting one on one and in groups and in state by state groups there.
Mm-hmm.
But man, one of the coolest things for sure that I've seen is our Tough Fest event. So,
Mm-hmm.
Tough Fest hosted here at the Bozeman Lab every June is a chance for all these mountain toughers that are training all over the globe to gather and meet in person, face to face, here with the Mountain Tough team. And so, because so many people are doing Mountain Tough in their garage or in their basement, they don't always get the chance to meet each other, see each other, work out with each other. So that event is super powerful.
That's awesome, man. How many are in the community? Like in the mountain, you say mountain toughers. What's
Yeah,
a number? I know it's probably growing by right as we sit here, but what is that number at right now?
it's wild, man. So, starting out of that park with just those three guys, now there's over 20,000 mountain toughers.
I mean, you don't think God's hand was on that, man, bro. I mean, you
Yeah.
just are proof that, actually listening and being connected to the Father and what He wants from you and what He's gifted you to do, and then walking it out in obedience is, I mean, that's you're living proof of that and a testimony to that, man. As we finish up right here, I just want to know, kind of from you, just from your heart, like, what do you feel like God is working on you personally the most in or at? Like, what is He chiseling? The Bible talks about pruning, right? Like, what do you feel like God's really kind of trimming some of the rough edges, pruning, just refining, would you say right now?
Man, I think it's the way we kind of started is definitely what stands out to me just with, and you said it on the podcast too, faith without works is dead. And I think sometimes I get, even with everything I've seen, which is crazy, and even, the way the disciples saw so many miracles, and then the way that they forgot all the miracles they've seen so quickly. We're the same way. And I find myself in that all the time. And so then I'm looking for that clarity before I take action. And it's just been a big theme of the year. And it's been a big theme of even the last couple days. I spent yesterday with a great guy. Um, Adam LaRoche played MLB
Mm-hmm.
baseball,
Mm-hmm.
and he felt the call while he was playing. He saw some human trafficking, decided to retire early from the MLB to do more in trafficking. And I went down to see him yesterday, and it's funny thinking about it right now because he has this amazing, amazing full time staff team anti human trafficking operation going on stateside. They're doing some phenomenal work.
Mm.
And it's kind of like, you look at Mountain Tough right now and you look at like what Adam has going on right now, and you want to think about how do I get there tomorrow. But we just talked about the whole Mountain Tough story, and it starts with these little tiny action steps. And Adam actually looked at me yesterday and he said, related to like the trafficking stuff I want to do in Montana, he looked at me and he's like, man, you just got to start. He's like, you got to just start. And he said that there's a famous Mother Teresa story about a guy that applied to work for Mother Teresa, got hired to go serve at her ministry, got there for his first day of work, and Mother Teresa sat down with him. And Mother Teresa was congratulating him on getting the job and getting to know him. And then Mother Teresa asked, how can I pray for you? And he's like, wow, man, Mother Teresa's going to pray for me. And he said, I'd like you to pray for my clarity. And Mother Teresa said, I won't do that. And he's like, what? And she's like,
Mm.
yeah, I won't pray for your clarity. And she said that everything that she's been doing, everything she's been working on in one of the greatest ministries of the world, there hasn't been a single day where she's had clarity. She's just been obedient and just been taking action where she's seen needs day after day after day. And so it kind of connects to where we started
Yeah.
the talk. It's like we're never going to have clarity. We have these little signs of obedience that we're supposed to take, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the currency of the kingdom. I mean, the currency of the
Mm-hmm.
kingdom is faith.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we
that's
think that we think clarity is going to be our cheat code for faith, right? We think
yeah,
we call it clarity, but we just kind of want to peek behind the curtain and like to her point, she would have missed out on a lot of stuff if she'd have known ahead of time or felt certain about, yeah, this is 100% what I need to do. And to the point of the story with LaRoche, man, he's a dude, by the way.
yeah,
He's connected with the Robertsons and
yeah,
they do a lot of work, but I heard and this is, you've heard this, I'm sure, but the best day to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best day is today. So
Mm.
it's like, you may have missed an opportunity a while back, but you got to start now. Like
Yeah.
today is the day. And yeah, man, you just start small like you did. You know the drill, you did it, and look where you are now. So you feel like God is kind of making you remember but not take for granted some of those things where he showed up and know that he will again, kind of thing. Because as you're talking, I'm thinking, man, we get so caught up into this, what's the next miracle, instead of being like, hey, remember that last miracle. Like we
Yeah.
we lose sight of that because we're so, and it's kind of a good and bad deal. It's a blessing and a curse because we're so excited because we know God has done it, and we're
Yeah.
excited to see, we're anticipating the next one, but we can also get a little discontented and anxious. And sometimes you do have to kind of slow down and be like, okay, let's not outrun him. Let's not
Yeah.
outrun God, but he's got something for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man. We'll close this out with something for the guys. I mean, these guys here, I don't know how many elk hunters we got, but we do have a lot of weightlifters and guys that want to protect their family and stand in the gap for those who can't defend themselves. And tell us where we can help you or support you. You're Mountain Tough, but also this trafficking deal that you're starting to be a part of.
You bet. Yeah. Yeah. So mountaintough.com would be, the place to go. You can click, start free trial there. Everyone starts on a 14-day free trial. You'll be able to access, all of our programming, full gear, minimal gear, those gym dailies, the minimal gear dailies, our mindset content, mental toughness content. It's all in there. Guys can stream it from their smartphone, their smart TV, anytime, anywhere, hotels, anywhere they have access to that app. They'll be ready to roll, and they're training with this this awesome, great community. So, a really good way for guys to kick off 2025 in the right direction if they're not already, lined up. We have a lot of hunters in there, but we have a lot of military in there, a lot of special operations, a lot of first responders. So a really, really great community of individuals, and easy to start for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah. I was going to ask you, and I totally just kind of breezed over it, but we had such a good conversation. I was going to, maybe this could be our last one, where you maybe give us the men in the nation, like American guys, like dudes that are trying to, because obviously we got a new administration that it looks like they mean business. It looks like they're not playing around, and maybe the ship is getting turned into a 180. What can guys do to be better at our mindset? Because I don't know what grade you would give us as a
Yeah.
whole, men in general, but how do you get us to an A or A plus from a mindset standpoint? Because that's really where it begins.
Yeah, to get from an A to an A plus from the mindset standpoint, in addition to I would take a day and do that obituary work.
Okay.
The second thing I would do is I would sign up for something that intimidates you this year. So
Mhm.
signing up for something that intimidates you completely changes the game. So, if a half marathon is outside your comfort zone, do that. If a marathon's outside your comfort zone, do that. If it's a Spartan beast, if it's a backcountry expedition, if it's a high rocks event, the real magic in that is it's got to be something that scares you significantly, and you need to register and swipe that credit card. Once you sign up for something that scares you, your mindset changes quickly. The workouts that you might be missing, you won't miss anymore.
Mm.
Diet that you might be missing, you won't miss anymore. So that is definitely not the key to long-term success, but that is a hack that kind of will sharpen you up real quickly. But the identity work is definitely most important.
Love it. Love it. Man, it's been awesome getting to connect and getting to meet you and hear your story. It's been a huge, huge blessing for the listeners. And we will definitely be pointing people to MTNTOUGH.com, and look forward to seeing kind of how your the ministry with the trafficking kind of takes off, because I'm sure you'll be letting us know how that is. So I appreciate it. Audience, he has been the one and only Dustin Diefenderfer. We have been Last in Line. Be blessed.